for joining me for this episode of Colton High Screencasts. I'm your host, Mr. Dollins. If you're in education, chances are likely that by this point, you've been sent a Google form. These forms come at you with a broad range of topics. Evaluate this workshop. What's your comfort level on this app? What will you bring to the potluck? No matter the topic, Google Forms can be an engaging tool, not only to request information, but also to collect and share data with your students. They can be used for class assignments, to create narratives, and provide opportunities for critical thinking. So let's get started setting up a Google form. To begin, where we want to go is we want to go into our Drive, and you select New, as you do with pretty much everything when you want to start something in a Google application. So we begin by clicking on Google Forms, and that will open up our Google form. Once our Google form is open, you will see that there are all sorts of options to choose from. You always want to start by titling your form, so that way you don't lose track of it. So I'm going to create for this podcast a check-in form. That way students can check in with us. Now, when you set up a form, you'll notice that you start off with a simple question. Now, when you click on the question, you can ask whatever it is you want, but you have multiple choices to choose from. So you can either have a multiple choice, like an A, B, C, D type of answer, or whatever your options are. But you also have a lot of other choices too. For example, you can ask for a short answer, or if you want something a little longer, you can do that. You have check boxes if you want multiple responses. You also can do a drop down. So if you don't want to have to, have an extremely long list of things, you can have a drop down to choose from. You can ask students to upload files, so you could use Google Forms as a place to turn in materials too. You can create linear scales if you are looking to do like affective charts or things of that nature. There are multiple choice grids. There are checkbox grids. You can also set date and time if you're doing like certain types of check-in forms, like let's say you're hosting a tutoring or something like that. You can have them check in at their specific time. So this is our first question for this group. And so the first thing that we want is their name. So since that is the case, we're going to go for a short answer option. And we're just going to ask them to submit your name. Real simple. This is a required text, so we want to make sure it is required by them. The three dots allow us to show description or response validation. You also can duplicate this question at any time, and you can delete it if you don't like it. Now, to add another question, you just click Add Question. And from there, you can do your next question. So, for example, I'm very curious as to what my students are feeling right now during this time. How are they doing, and how are their families? So how are you and your family doing at this time? What interesting stories can you share? And so I'm going to make this a paragraph, as you can see. Now, another thing that you can do if you want to is you can add an image here as well. So you can insert images by uploading either from your camera, through a URL image, from your own photos, from your Google Drive. So you can actually do all sorts of things. You can even do a Google image search and add directly from there. We're not going to do that at this time, but these are all options for you to be able to choose from. Again, I want this to be a required text. I want the students to do it. And so then I'll add another question. In this case, I want to ask them, what is your comfort level with the most current assignment on Google Classroom? I want to know how they're doing with their comfort level. So I'm going to click a linear scale. And this will give me a chance to look at 1 to 5. So 1 being lowest. So being I don't understand anything. And 5 being I got this. I don't need any help. And so that allows the students to respond to that. And now I know who to contact to be able to check in with. So these are just some ways that you can do, to mess around with this. Now, you can import questions from other Google Forms if you like one that you have. You also can change the title and description of the section. So you can now add a new section with titles and descriptions. You also can, of course, continue to add images. You can add video from YouTube. You can also add what are called sections. So let's say you're trying to use your Google form as some sort of a narrative. you can actually create a whole separate section and have your questions connect them. So after section 1, notice it tells them where to continue. You can either go to section 2, but what if I create a third section? And so, for example, let's say the student here, if we click on this one, we know that after this one, I want them to go to section 2, which in this case is going to be, what type of help do you need? So now I know that the students are going to be able to respond to that. So I'm going to click on this and I will say explain which parts of the assignment you are experiencing trouble with. All right, so that's a required question. So now that they have that, so I know that I'm going to now create another section, which is going to be for the people that are at the lower end of this. So they will click on, they'll have something like just submit your response. So this will be a thank you. So was this form helpful? And that's going to be 2 options, yes or no. And then also required, once they answer it, they will it'll give them the submit button and they will be able to go from there. So when they look at their form, they will have all these options. Now, what's really cool about forms is that you have an awful lot of choices. So for example, you can customize your theme. So if you don't like the color choices, you can obviously change your colors. You can choose your own image for the for the top bar. Google has, of course, tons of different options for that. So like me, I love jelly beans. So I'm going to insert jelly beans as the top of my form. So now when the students see it, notice it changes the colors because that's a particular theme. You can also change your fonts to different type of, different types of looks. I'm going to keep it basic for this one. When you're done, you exit out. You also have here, you can preview your form. So when you take a look at your form here, you have the check-in. And then once you type in, you can actually see that they go next. Now, it won't let you go to the next because it is required. So I'm going to do a sample student here. Let's give an answer a kid would give. We are fine. I'm going to say, I don't understand anything. So next. And that's going to get me to the next part of the assignment. So explain which parts of the assignment you're experiencing trouble with. So I don't understand how to evaluate for X. All right. So click on next. Now submit your response. The form was helpful. Click submit. And now it's there. So because this is a preview, it's in its own tab. So I can be done and just exit out. You'll notice that I now have one response. So since I have a response, I can now come up here to the response and I can actually see what was said. Now you have multiple response areas. You have your summary, which is just all of your students together. You have the specific questions that you can break down by student, or you can look at the individual student. If you want to look at a Google Sheet that has all of this information collected, you can always click here and it'll open up a Google Sheet for you so you can actually look at the information separately. You can create the new spreadsheet here, click create, and you'll notice a new tab will pop up. And now all of a sudden you will have all of that information here on a Google Sheet with a time and date stamp so you know exactly when your students checked in. You also always can click on the 3 dots to get different types of responses, all right, different types of options for there. Last but not least is your settings bar. Here we're going to go back to the questions, and we're going to open up the settings bar. The settings tab here gives you a lot of choices. So for example, if you want to collect your students' email addresses, you can do that. You can also restrict who gets to be here. You can also limit to responses. So I don't want kids responding to this one more than once. And then afterwards, they can either edit it or see their own responses. This really is nice if you are going to give them some sort of formative assessment and you want them to see the responses that they had, or the summary chart so they can see how their responses compare to their classmates without giving up any names. You also can control the presentation of this by showing a progress bar so they can see how far they are towards finishing the form, especially if you have multiple sections. You also can shuffle question orders in the event that you're giving like an assessment and you want each test to feel slightly different. You also can, of course, give a confirmation message. So you can basically say like, thanks for submitting this form. Hope you are feeling a-okay. All right, and then we're done with that. We also have the quizzes where you can make this into a quiz and you can actually lock your Chromebook. So that way, if you're giving them something and you don't want them to be able to go into other tabs to look for answers, you actually can lock it for them. So that way, when they're in this, they're in this. Now, it doesn't stop them from using outside devices during the quarantine time, but it certainly helps to keep them focused on that computer with what you're having them do. And then, of course, you can decide how you're going to release the information to them afterwards. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And so now all of my settings are there. When I'm ready to go, I just click Send. And you have options. You can either send specific emails to people, or you can just click on the link. It'll even let you shorten the URL if you want to publish it simply. So you can put this easily on your Google Classroom. You also can embed this. So if you want to embed this into a website, like let's say you're using a PowerSchool page and you want to embed the web, you can do that using this as well. And it'll just put your form directly into the PowerSchool page. Last but not least, you can add collaborators. So if you want other teachers to join you with this and help you to put it together, you click on Add Collaborator, and just like with any Google product, you just type in those individuals' names here. They'll pop up, and you send it to them. So that way they know that you want their help. All right. So that's how you set up a Google form. The uses for Google Forms are limitless. You can use them for a whole slew of things, from basic things like tests and quizzes or check-in forms like this one here. You can do choose your own adventure type of narratives with your students where you have them do analysis activities. You could use them for, I don't know, the sky's the limit. So put your creative hat on, take a look at forms, and give it your best shot. Well, until next time, I'm Mr. Dollins.